The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the October webinar from Charitable Giving Resource Center in West Des Moines, Iowa. I hope that everybody is having as nice a weather as we are. It's definitely fall-like here in Iowa. Wanted to let you know that we have started our webinar series for the fall. Today is on the CAP designation. I am a very strong proponent of that for organizations that are getting into plan giving, and specifically community foundations that want to have a little stronger hold in their communities in regard to talking with allied professionals, financial advisors, etc. Next week we'll be doing one on the 6th at noon on nonprofit succession planning. As many of us know and experience, the average stay for a nonprofit professional is about 16 months in their position, and then they move on. And I'd like to see us understand how we as nonprofits and board members can help to curb that turnover as quickly as it is. And I believe that one of the places we can start is through succession planning. Then on the 13th of November, as we enter year-end for, again, many of the nonprofits on, we're going to talk about qualifying and cultivating major donors. And in that webinar, we're going to actually give you some hands-on tools to understand how to go in and look at your donor database and determine who are some of the best prospects to move to that next level as a major giver. So I hope that all of you will join us on those two as well. Again, the 6th is at noon, and on the 13th it's at 4 p.m., and both of those are Central Standard Time. Today we have with us Phil Cubeta. I'm proud to say that Phil is not only a colleague but a friend. He is currently the Sally B. and William B. Wallace Chair in Philanthropy at the American College in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. He is responsible for the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy curriculum, so I guess you could call him the grand poobah of the CAP program. Prior to joining the American College, Phil had some time in life insurance with New York Life. He helped New York Life's charitable giving network of agents really gear up for charitable giving and planning. From 1995 to 2008, he served as Chief of Staff for the Nautilus Group, a service of New York Life Insurance Company, and that group provided estate, business, and philanthropic strategies to affluent clients through 200 of the company's top agents. Phil's original training was in English literature through Williams College. He got his undergrad. He has a philosophy and psychology degree from Oxford University in Maine and English language and literature from Yale. Phil has served for 10 years on the Education Committee for the Dallas Social Venture Partners and is past president of the Dallas Council of Partnership for Philanthropic Planning. He's on the board of Interfaith Worker Justice and on the Professional Advisory Committee for Inspired Legacy. And I could go on for a long time and talk about the things that Phil has done, but today we're going to focus on the designation that is Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy. For some of us, we've heard it but maybe don't understand exactly what it brings to the table, and for others, this may be the first time that you've heard the designation and will understand better what that means. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the program over to Phil Cubeta.
Well, thank you so much for organizing this, Sue, and it's really a pleasure to do it, and thank you all for taking time out of your day to listen in. What we're talking about really is the spirit of the work we can do together in your community. It really isn't about, obviously not about me or the program. It's really about what you can do for people in your community and how we can collaborate to make that happen. The agenda today: why now, why us, how to start a conversation about philanthropy with a high net worth person, and why we need each other and what we can do together. One reason this is so topical, this whole idea of planning for legacy, is the amount of money moving between generations, from the World War II generation to the boomers and from the boomers to those who come after. It's actually a record transfer of wealth. These numbers have been updated recently by the Boston College Social Welfare Institute, and you can see they're expecting a huge amount of that money to go to charity if it's properly solicited. I think it's important to realize for advisors as well as fundraisers that The interest in this topic goes up as wealth goes up. I guess that's not surprising, but it seems to me a lot of people don't realize how important philanthropy is to those who have more. You can see if you were in a bracket where you were giving, let's say, a third of your estate to charity at your death, you would care a lot about that. That's really a child's share. So you would want somebody to work with you intelligently on how you're going to deploy those dollars. So if you're working in your organization with certain board members or other people in your organization, in your realm of constituents who are worth that kind of money, and you know they're going to be giving on average, let's say 30% at death to charity, it's important that you be in that conversation, because I don't think advisors in general are really good at talking about what I would call the philanthropic side of philanthropy. This is a topic of great interest. I'm sure you've heard about the giving pledge with the Gateses and Warren Buffett and several hundred others who have pledged to give away up to half of their net worth at death or during their lifetime. These are billionaires. They're some of the wealthiest people in the world. It's obviously a priority for them. But it's also a priority with what you might call ordinary people, people who don't have so much, but for whom giving is a passion. And I actually know this woman, Pilar Gonzalez, and she says, during the years I earned as much as $50,000 to $100,000 a year, I gave away 25% or 50% of my annual income. One year I earned only $16,000 because of health reasons, yet I still gave the same percentage, which is remarkable. She says, my giving is now settled at 10 to 25% of my income. So even people who don't have a lot make it a priority. So why us, and who do I mean by us? I mean us collectively, both you and also advisors. This is from a Bank of America Merrill Lynch study on where wealthy people turn to get advice about their giving. And it adds up to much more than 100% because I asked more than one source. And you can see there that it would appear that the accountants are doing the best, and then the attorneys and the financial advisors, then nonprofits and community foundation staff. I'm shocked that that's so low, and then bank people last. But it looks like on average the accountants are doing well. But if you go to the next slide here, this is shocking, and I have to say honestly, I think it's a little bit shameful, because what the red represents is the percentage of times that the advisor initiated the conversation, and the blue represents the percentage of times it was the client who had to bring it up. So you can see with the accountants, they only bring it up spontaneously about 6% of the time. The attorneys only bring it up about 6% of the time. Wealth advisors a little bit better, almost 8%. Nonprofit people you would think bring it up all the time. But I don't think the clients perceive it as a conversation about their philanthropy. I think they perceive it as a plea for money, and that's a different kind of conversation. So I think we all have room here to improve. A great deal of planning in estate planning by attorneys, CPAs, financial advisors is based on an assumption. And I kind of know this to be true because I spent so many years in the planning business doing it. And in our organization, we did about 2,000 projects a year for families with median net worth of, let's say, $15 million. Most of them were business owners. So I saw what came in month after month, year after year. And typically, the forms that would come in would specify the client's goals. And the goals were almost always the same. And I think that's because the goals were often assumed rather than probed and asked about. Typically, advisors plan to get the most possible money to the heirs to reduce taxes, grow the funds, and make sure the heirs get as much as possible. But that may not be what clients want, particularly at the higher income brackets and net worth brackets. This study by U.S. Trust said that fewer than half of very wealthy parents said it's important to leave a financial inheritance to the next generation, even though they consider the success of their children to be one of the most important measures of their own success. Now, what that's saying is at least half the time, families are not so sure they want to leave much to the kids. And what that means is, really, it's going to go to charity. They don't want to go to taxes. They're not so sure it should go to the kids because they're not really sure how much is enough for the kids and how much might be too much, and the alternative is charity. Okay, so those are the kinds of dollars that could be moving, should be moving to philanthropy if we can all collectively get in there and kind of do our jobs in a way that elicits the donor's true motivation. Now, advisors are getting more and more active in this field. I know it because I actually teach them, and the studies show that advisors are more and more active. They're trying to do more. But at the same time, I'm not so sure they're really hitting the spot or totally serving the need at the moment. A number of studies point out that clients would like more. Asked, are you satisfied with the help you're getting from advisors? Only 21% in this study said yes. Overwhelmingly, they report it's they who have to raise the philanthropic question. We saw that earlier. They've got to bring it up. Many donors say saving taxes is important, but they're tired of it always being the topic of conversation. And you all know that. You know it's not about the tax savings. It's about social impact. Half of clients said the advisor did not discuss personal or social values or help them develop a philanthropic mission, and that's what you all do so well. It's a missing piece. This study, quite recently, lays it out in very, very stark terms as to why there's an unmet need here, the shape of the unmet need. If you look on the gray, this is what advisors think wealthy clients are concerned about. The left-hand side shows you what they're actually concerned about. Why don't people give more? When you ask advisors that, you get answers like, they're afraid they won't have enough money for the heirs, they're afraid they won't have enough money for themselves, and they're afraid that they're not wealthy enough to give. That's the advisor's perception, okay? That's the advisor's perception. But if you come to the left-hand side, you see how the clients actually answer the question. Their number one concern, and this, again, won't surprise you, although it surprises the advisors, is my gift will not be used wisely. In other words, my money will be wasted. I want to get something for the money I put into nonprofits. I want results. I want an outcome. They also said they felt a lack of connection with the nonprofits, and they were concerned they'd be solicited more and more the more they gave. So I think between the two of us, the two groups, we can do better. And we have to begin by asking people about what they're wanting to accomplish. What they're wanting to accomplish, not just what we're wanting to accomplish, but what they're wanting to accomplish. Listen to their story as well as telling our own so they can connect to us and our mission and see us as a potentially major investment of this kind of money. If you're listening along and I'm just sort of a voice ringing in your ears and you want to get a little more active, would you take a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and kind of play along here with me? Because I think this is something that you can use later today. You can use with the next wealthy person you talk to about their situation. You can draw a line across the paper and say, this is what we call the planning horizon. What I have found over my career is that most of my peers, most of my competitors, most of my colleagues spend most of their time working below the line on the how of it all. They talk to you about the grits and the grats and the cruts and the crats and all the tools and techniques that go into financial planning and legacy planning and estate planning. But they don't really talk to you about why you're doing these things, what the purpose is behind it all. Have you found that to be true? And almost universally, clients will agree, yeah, they're always talking to me about the tools, but they're really not talking that much about me. Now, I'd say, what I try to specialize in is you and your family, and what you're trying to accomplish. And I spend most of my time working above the line, asking you about you and what you're trying to accomplish, getting to know you. And then when we're in agreement about what you're trying to accomplish, and why you're trying to accomplish it, then I'll put together a team with other advisors and nonprofits and go below the line to make sure you get what you're hoping to get. So On that basis, could I ask you some more questions about you? And people will almost always agree to that. Now, these are much higher level questions than almost anybody asks. And I would say I would not memorize these questions. I get a copy of the slide handouts. I wouldn't memorize them. I wouldn't use them verbatim. I would let them kind of simmer on your own back burner and resonate with the kind of questions you ask yourself. I would never ask somebody else a question that I had not asked myself first, because it'll sound like you're gaming them or playing them, right? But some of these questions will resonate with you because you're asking them in the dark of the night yourself at 2 in the morning, okay? I know a lot of these questions are in my show because they resonate so much with me. I'd use my own way of asking, but these get at issues that I think are very, very important to all of us, although we all come at it in our own words. I met this guy, Michael Shaughnessy, at a board meeting for Tracy Gary's group called Inspired Legacies. And I was doing a presentation like this about donor motivation. And he raised his hand and said, you know, Phil, I probably shouldn't say anything about what motivates the wealthy because I was a Jesuit priest and I took a vow of poverty and I didn't have much money. And now I'm a high school teacher and I still don't have much money. But what you're talking about reminds me of 2 questions that I ask my high school kids. What kind of person do you want to be in what kind of world? And I can't think of 2 better questions for philanthropy. What kind of person, what kind of world? This is Jay Steenhuisen. Among his other accomplishments, he's the outgoing president of Partnership of Philanthropic Planning. Their board of directors is president of that. He's raised money for World Vision, for Brown University. He's been an advisor with Harris Bank. And he likes to ask the people he works with, do you recognize any element of luck, blessing, or grace in your success? Now, if the client says, absolutely not, I did it my way, it's all about me, then you gently move on. But most people do acknowledge that some degree of debt, really, that they'd like to repay. This is Peter Karoff. He virtually invented the genre of philanthropic planning. He started a company called the Philanthropic Initiative. It was actually a nonprofit. And he wrote a book called The World We Want, in which he interviewed very wealthy people about what they were doing with their giving. And these are the questions he asked each of them. What is your vision of a better world? Kind of a blue sky question. What conditions are needed to realize it? What are the obstacles? And then what parts of the vision are realistic? And what ideas, strategies, and plans can make it so? So we're going from a blue sky vision to practical engagement with the issues and seeing how we can actually make progress. This is Tracy Gary in her wonderful book, Inspired Philanthropy. She's been a mentor to me. I've learned a huge amount from her. These are her questions, and I've kind of kept her language because she has a unique voice, and I don't sound like this, but I wish I did. She says to people, what would you like to change or preserve in the world? Change or preserve. Has your past giving reflected your hopes? Or have you been disappointed? What are the causes behind the issues that you care about? What might change the situation? And who joins you in this work? Because we're not going to change the world for the better all by ourselves. It's a community-wide effort. Who joins you in this work? And how will you learn? How will you experiment and revise? Joe Breitnecker took over the Philanthropic Initiative after Peter retired, and sadly Joe died at about a year or so after his picture was taken. You can see on his shirt, his T-shirt, a Harvard crest. You can see his kind of attitude. He's got a wonderful, wonderful sense of humor. And he didn't want to take the time to ask people for their mission statement. You've probably gone through that exercise. He wanted to cut to the chase. He would ask people, if your family had a crest, what would be the motto? Give me 2 words. Give me 2 words that hit off the values your family lives by. And when it comes to the world, what keeps you awake at night? This man is Charlie Collier. He was senior philanthropic consultant at Harvard until recently. And these are from his book, Wealth and Families. And if you know advisors, or for that matter, if you're working with the clients of advisors, you will find this first question to be very effective. What principles have guided your legacy planning today? Now, everybody has, or most people have, some kind of legacy plan. Maybe not as many of them have it formalized as need to have, but wealthy people generally do have documents. And they will often say to advisors, or would say to you, those documents have been done by excellent advisors, and that's true. But what principles have guided that planning to date? Now, when I first read that question, I felt kind of a cold shudder, because I'd worked in estate planning for so many years, and I'd seen so many thousands of cases come through. And I looked at the way planning was being done, and I realized the principles that were guiding it were things like greed, fear, control. There was nothing very noble about it. And I began to realize the people were better than their plans. The people we were working with were much better than you would ever know from the plans they sent in. And the reason is the advisors were not listening to who these people really were. They were creating plans based on assumptions about the motivation rather than on the actual motivation. They weren't getting at the principles. Likewise, Charlie would ask, what are you up against with your children? And that's a way of getting into the next question. How wealthy do you want your children to be? Because the less wealthy you want them to be, the more likely it is that philanthropy is going to be part of your legacy plan in a big way. And it's not really clear. For many, many parents, this is a dilemma. And I'm sure, you've thought about if you're married and have kids, you've thought about money and your kids and wonder, what their attitudes towards it are. And as many problems as kids have, if you add millions and millions and millions of dollars to it, it can make it a lot worse. If you can imagine your own kid graduate from college and never having to have a job because you left the money in a trust fund, would that be a good thing for them in their life and their character and their self-respect? So parents today are deeply concerned about this issue. And if you can explore it with them, you can help them reopen their planning in a much more positive way that would include more philanthropy in it. For somebody at midlife or late midlife, were there things that you wanted to do when you were younger that you've not yet done? And how might you still get back to that while you have time? What you'll find is that many, many people, I'm a case in point. I mean, I took a hard right turn from financial services into a job teaching philanthropy because I was haunted by a question like this. I was asking myself, was I put on earth to do this? I was successful at my job. I was making money, all the kinds of things. But I was saying to myself, okay, that's all great, but was I put on earth to do this? And you, through philanthropy, can allow people to make a transition through volunteering, board service, significant giving, to getting back to who they really are and what they're really trying to accomplish in life. This is a question I think is transferable if you're working with attorneys, you're trying to reach out to advisors and help them. This is a question I think they find quite comfortable because they're planning for the client and they're planning for the client's business, the client's money, the client's family. They've done all that, okay? But they can then towards the end ask, at the end of the fact-finding, beyond yourself and your family, is there anywhere else in the world on which you'd like to have a positive impact? If they say yes to that there are things beyond themselves and their family, things involving the community, we have the basis for radically revising their plans and making them so much better and so much more idealistic. This is a financial advisor named Tim Belber, and he likes to ask, what would you like to see more of in the world, what you'd like to see less of? And he takes the local paper and he gives them a pen, one color pen, to circle the things they want more of, and another color pen to circle the things they want less of. And he uses that as a way of getting at their issue area, thing they want to focus on. This man is Mordechai Liebling, and he teaches rabbis rabbinical studies. He also teaches fundraising. And he and I were together. I actually went to see him. He serves on a social justice board that I'm on. I went to see him because I've been trying to get advisors to ask these more, I would guess, profound questions. And I wasn't always having a lot of luck. So I asked the rabbi who teaches fundraising, Rabbi, would you ask these questions? Because I was looking for consolation. I thought he would say yes, and then I'd feel better. And he said, in one word, he said, no, N-O. And I asked him why, and he said, there are 3 things you need to know about rabbis. Number 1, we're a prophet. I said, well, these are prophetic questions. He agreed. Number 2, we're a pastor. We're responsible for a congregation. I said, okay, these are pastoral questions for sure. He said, yes, they are. And he said, 3rd, we're an employee of the temple. And I said, okay, I can kind of understand that it might be awkward if you're an employee of the temple and you don't necessarily want to probe too hard with other people and so forth. But I wasn't satisfied with that answer, and he wasn't either. So he came to the American College and he role-played a fundraising interview on camera with a prospect. And when he was finished, he said, that was a great job. I mean, you sound like a very good fundraiser, but you don't sound like a rabbi. His eyes flashed. You can see those blue eyes. And he sat back down in front of the woman. And he said, this is what came out of his mouth, your last will and testament is your final teaching. What do you want it to say? Wow. I mean, that is the true prophetic voice. So why we need each other if we're going to do work at this level? And by each other, I mean you and the advisors. Sometimes I give this talk to advisors. Sometimes I give it to nonprofit people. And wherever possible, I like both groups in the room because then we can actually make it happen, okay? But if you're thinking about yourself now as somebody working with a nonprofit and you are perceived to be a fundraiser, okay, how often have clients or donors shared with you their balance sheet? Not often. If I can't see your hands here, but most people in the nonprofit sector say very seldom, if ever, will the client lay out their financial information because they're afraid basically we'll be looking at it from the perspective of just getting some of it. Nevertheless, if advisors were present, okay, if advisors were present, I was standing in front of both groups. So let's say we have the fundraisers on one side of the aisle, and we have the advisors on the other side of the aisle, and almost like in a church, I'm trying to get a marriage consummated and get you all dancing together at the reception. But you think these 2 groups as separated by an aisle. I would now turn to the advisors and I would say, what do we call it in the advisor realm when somebody makes a recommendation about a complex tool like a charitable remainder trust or a charitable lead trust or a donor advised fund or a gift annuity without knowing the client's finances? What do we call that? And they won't say anything in front of the advisors unless I make them. The advisors won't say anything in front of the fundraisers unless I make them, because the word used in advisory circles is malpractice. Okay, it's considered a malpractice for an advisor to recommend a CRT without knowing anything about the person's money. It's just be shooting in the dark, and they perceive fundraisers as doing that. And that may seem like a slam at fundraisers, and I don't mean it that way. What I really mean to say is we need each other. You need the advisor to help you on these complex cases. You should not see them as an adversary. You should see them as a possible teammate and get them on the team. They may kill your deal if it's a bad deal, but they're not going to kill your deal if it's a good one if you enlist and enroll them on the team, because they need to do their job, which is working from the balance sheet. I would then turn to the advisors and say, this is a snapshot out of a financial or estate plan, and they immediately recognize it as such. It shows somebody's estate flowing through the estate tax tables and who's going to get what at the end. So they've all done planning like this, and what I will say to them is, when you plan for legacy or you plan philanthropy, are you planning for the, quote, charity of your choice, unquote, or family charity or something abstract? And they will shift around in their chairs and they will acknowledge the yes, indeed. They leave it at that. as long as the money is going to some nebulous charity, the family charity or the charity of your choice, they've done their job from a tax-saving standpoint, okay? But you and I know the job has only begun as far as achieving social impact, and that's the number one concern that clients have. If you remember the earlier slide, we don't want our money to be wasted. We want to know our money when it goes to charity is doing some good in the world. We can't get to that point if the advisors don't bring you into the loop at the end of their process or as part of their process, so the money actually is put to good use. It cannot be left in a bucket called family charity or the equivalent. They need you as much as you need them, or maybe another way to put it is the clients and donors need us to work better together. So you might consider this to be kind of an eye chart. And on the left, I think, is what advisors see clearly. On the right is what nonprofit people see clearly. And if we could see it all clearly, we'd be much better off. Very few of us work with clients on vision, ideals, hopes, and aspirations, but that's where it starts above the line. They need to know something about the needs of the organization and the community if they're going to be giving 10, 20, 30% of net worth to philanthropy. They need to know what the needs are. But advisors see the financial goals, financial facts, and financial strategies. That is very clear to them in the financial results. This other stuff is hazy. On the other hand, the nonprofit people tend to see the needs of the organization and the community very clearly, and they see the importance of a gift, and they see the importance of giving to a specific charity, and they see the financial results, and they see the social impact, but they don't really see the overall financial goals, the overall financial facts, and the overall financial strategies into which these large gifts are going to have to fit. So the purpose of our work together, the purpose of the program I teach is really to bring us all together here on this page so that we can all work together to make sure the client gets all this done, client or donor. So that brings me to what it means to be a CAP, Charter Advisor in Philanthropy, and I think I've probably already kind of shown you. This is the funders and founders, Bill and Sally Wallace. And he was the former head of Home Life. He rose up through the ranks. He started as an agent, became CEO of the company. He was at one point the chairman of the board at the college where I teach now. Until recently, he was on the foundation board, just retired. He's won the biggest honors the college offers, and he's the largest individual donor the college ever had. He funded the program because he and his wife believe in philanthropy and they want that message spread. The purpose of the program is to help us both sides of us come together to elicit what the client is trying to accomplish, connect through an estate plan or a financial plan to steer the dollars to the organizations that are doing the most good, and for the nonprofits to dovetail with that process so it gets done. Bill said, as far as why he and Sally did the program, he said, Sally and I give away a lot of money, and the fundraisers can bring us to tears for their causes, but they really don't know our money. The advisors know our money, but they're cold as ice about our charitable passions. Why don't you all talk to each other before you talk to us? Get on the same page to help us be as generous as we want to be in a meaningful way. And they want to create a credential that would make this happen. The purpose of the credential CAP, these are Bill's words really, to create national awareness of the need for this, provide a comprehensive curriculum for both groups, fundraisers and advisors. 3, promote understanding of the issues we face, as whether we're advisors or fundraisers, the issues we have in common, and to help fundraisers and advisors understand each other's perspectives so that we can work better together. So those are the goals I was set by Bill and Sally, and I'm honored to work on these, and I think we're making progress with them. I won't go into the details about the courses because I can easily email that to you if you're interested. But there are 3 master's level courses. It does not presuppose you've had any other courses in finance. Let me assure you that, okay? My background is I'm an English major, and I've spent a lifetime training and teaching, okay? I would never put you in a position where I asked you to take a course that you were unprepared for. So we're not going to be asking you to know a lot about tax law and all that before you arrive. I assume you may not. The first course is a continuation of what you just heard. what you heard was kind of an outtake from the first couple of assignments. It's advisor focused in a way. It's focusing on advisors who work with wealthy families and asking them to go beyond just planning for the money and begin to plan as well for social impact. And that's a radical change for them. The second course is Charitable Giving Strategies, and that's focused on the tools and techniques we all need. And 859 is looking at all this from the perspective of the nonprofit person who's working for a nonprofit organization trying to raise money, so gift planning in a nonprofit context. And the philosophy is, although these courses may have a different focus, it's all part of one perspective and a shared perspective. You learn their perspective, they learn your perspective, we meet in the middle, and we form a collaborative team to really help these families like Bill and Sally. I think the most important thing I want to say beyond what we've said already is really about the way CAP is working in communities. And this happened spontaneously. I didn't make it happen, but Bill Wallace took me aside one time at a country club where he'd take me out for dinner, and he said to me he visualized a day. He was giving me his dreams, and he visualized a day when advisors and fundraisers would be sitting in a conference room, maybe at a community foundation, maybe in a business office, learning not just about the material in the program, but learning with each other and learning from each other and learning to respect each other and like each other and begin to see why we need each other. So that's what he would visualize. That's a wonderful dream, but I didn't quite know how to make it happen. But it began to happen because of these people here. I'm in the middle with a red tie. And the organizers of these first two study groups, Dallas and Tyler on the outside edges of the picture, they organized groups. Nobody asked them to do it. They just went ahead and did it. They organized groups in a local, and they were both done in local community foundations. Half advisors, or maybe 2/3 advisors, and 1/3 nonprofit people to get together to go through this material together and get to be friends. This will give you an idea of the kind of organizations that came into this in Dallas and Tyler. You can see it's a rich, rich mixture of some of the very best people. I spent about 17 years in Dallas, so all these people are my friends, you know, and I just love the fact that they stepped up to do this for the community. These are some of the very best people in the advisory community and some of the very best people in the fundraising community, and it's just kept on going. I think about 100 people in Dallas and Tyler have now been through it. They enjoyed it so much. When the first class graduated, they did this at Communities Foundation in Texas, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful. The woman who organized it was Jackie Franey, who's now head of fundraising for Nature Conservancy, which at that time she worked for CFT. And she was so wonderful. I mean, she handed out cards at the tables, and you can visualize this for Des Moines. They handed out cards at the tables and said, if you liked, you know, the CAP program, you liked, like I went there to speak, if you liked hearing CAP presented by Phil, would you write a note to the Wallaces and say how you feel? Well, everybody there might have been 150 people in the room, wrote thank you notes to Bill and Sally. And she put them in that binder and wrapped it up with tissue paper. I took it to Bill and Sally here in their condo in Florida. They were selling the condo. They'd already given the furniture away to Salvation Army. The truck was coming the next day. They'd sold their house in Maryland. They were moving into a retirement community that wasn't, the facility wasn't even ready for them, so they're kind of homeless after this day. And Bill said to Sally, you know, we've given away all of our stuff, but we'll never give away this album. This is our legacy. Well, from Dallas, it has spread around the country. This is a group at Pittsburgh, and I just ask you to look at their faces, okay? How many times in a business setting do you see people this happy and haven't even been drinking? You know, this is lunch. It's just sheer delight to work with the highest caliber people in your community to do the right thing, and that's the spirit in which they are meeting there. This is Omaha, and once again, do you notice a certain bliss? Wonderful group of people, and they've now done it, I think, 4 or 5 times. They've got 4 or 5 groups to go through. They've got a waiting list of 75 people to get in. They only accept 15 people per class. It's the same kind of balanced group we saw in Dallas. This is West Palm Beach. They've been doing it now 4 or 5 times as well. They also have a long waiting list to get in. I think once again you can see these people don't look like they're studying hard and working hard, do they? They look like they're having fun. And that is the spirit of the program. This is one of our recent study groups. This is Columbus Foundation. That's Lisa Jolly in the center with a magenta jacket. She's very big in AdNet, Advancement Network for Community Foundations. She was a lead person there this year. And they've got a great group going through. So we'd love to see something like this happen for you, with you, and to have you either form a study group or join a study group and get involved if you're able to, if you can afford the time, if it's within your budget and so forth. Because really this is not about a credential only. It's not about learning a lot, although you will. It's primarily about, in the spirit of Bill and Sally, doing something today for our communities, helping other people do something today for their communities, and that is what motivates people. If you look at the faces here, that is what is motivating these people. It's not all about making a buck, believe it or not. If I stand up in front of a group like this and I talk about making a buck, they look back at me, and they already know that. What they want is how to go beyond it to make an impact. There are 3 ways you can get involved if you would like to get involved, and I really hope you will. You can self-study. Now, the courses are designed with recorded lectures, so just as you're hearing my voice and you're seeing these slides, it'll be identical. The audio will be a little bit better, but it'll be identical. I will lecture. The slides that go by, you will learn. There'll be readings that you read. You listen to the lecture. There'll be a self-test at the end of each assignment. At the end of 10 assignments, which is a course, you go to an exam center and take an objective test. It all runs on rails. That's my job. Hope I do it well. It's designed that way. So it doesn't require anything more than you putting in 4 or 5 hours a week to do what I just said. But the blissful part, the grown-up fun part, is to form or be a part of a local study group where you can actually get together and stir this conversation. Now, it's mostly fundraiser, nonprofit field today, but wouldn't it be wonderful if the advisors that you have in your loop had heard what I had to say today? Don't you think they would have been struck by it? Because I'm in their face too, really, right? I'm challenging them to step up in a way that maybe would be awkward for you to do. I'm saying we can do better. We can do better and must do better, and we need nonprofits to do it. So I will get that message out. So if you can stock the group with some of the best advisors in town, you have an outstanding chance of success. You want to start with the very best people and work down, not the least good people and work up. You want to start with the best. We can also have you join a national online CAP study group with Sally Alsbaugh, who's a friend and colleague from Advisors in Philanthropy, and you can ask Sue McAtee about her. So there are 3 options depending on how involved you want to be, and they can be mix and match to a degree as well. So let me tell you about, I mentioned course delivery, how that works for self-study. If you wanted to join the national study group, this is the facilitator, Sally Alsbaugh. She is really a wonderful person. You kind of see that in her face. You can see what, how idealistic she is, and she will take a kind of a public-spirited view of the whole thing. She's been a very good fundraiser. She's been a very good advisor. She's been the head of Advisors in Philanthropy. She's often served on their board. So she'll be meeting every other week. This is the schedule, starting in January. So 5 sessions per course times 3 courses, adds up about 9 months. This is the time, those are the dates. And if you wanted to, you could listen to the lectures on your own time, like 11 to 12 at night or whenever you want to do it. And then every other week you tap in, not to hear Sally, but we're using software that allows her to break you into small groups. So you talk to each other. You socialize what you're learning. You get a chance to talk with advisors rather than at them, and vice versa, and you begin to form teams. Or you could come to listen to Sally with Sue McAtee at her facility, or you could form your own study group locally. So there are a number of choices, but I think the key to getting the most out of it, if you possibly can, is to make sure you're involved with at least one other person whose perspective is different, so they can begin to bridge this divide between the advisor world and the nonprofit world to provide better service to the people we serve. Sally was part of the very first CAP study group. I was not even aware of it. My predecessor back in 2003 had put together the first study group with Sally. This is a slide about advising philanthropy. They've been big supporters of CAP. As you can see, it's on their main menu there. This book is The Right Side of the Table by Todd Fithian. I was quoting him earlier about that above and below the line idea. Title is The Right Side of the Table. This is the book that leads off the CAP program, and Todd is actually going to join us. So I think it's great. He's also the president of Advising Philanthropy. So if you did join the national group, you'd actually be a part of that, teaching and learning and interacting along with everybody else. This is the pricing. This is a package price. If you sign up for all 3 courses at once, it's quite a bit cheaper, and that includes a 5% discount for those people listening today. We're going to call you Friends of AIP, and that entitles you to the 5% discount that's included here. If that's a lot of money for you, I would begin to think about what advisors are you close to, and could you get them to join, and would they sponsor? We're having some uptake from advisors on that. Advisors who are giving to organizations are considering sending a fundraiser through with them so that they're leveraging their gift. Not only are they giving money, they're giving their time and expertise and doing things for the good of the order. If you're a nonprofit, I would consider inviting a for-profit ally. If you're a for-profit person, get a nonprofit involved. And here's where you can find out more. I'll also ask Sue if we can have the information about the people on the call today, and we'll send you more information if you want it, or ask if you want more information. But we would really, really love to have you involved, and I hope that some of you will join the national group, some will self-study, and perhaps some of you, maybe the community foundations, would like to talk about starting your own locally. And we've had a tremendous uptake from community foundations around the country who find this to be a great way to bring advisors together in a room and get them through a curriculum that will make them much more active in philanthropy, get their clients more involved in philanthropy, and better informed in doing it. So at that point, I'm just going to open it up for any questions you might have, and thank you for your time and attention and for all the wonderful things you're doing in the community.
I'm going to just look here, Phil, to see if we have questions down here. Find the anybody here at CGRC have questions for Phil today? So I've got just a couple of things. Yes, kudos to you and the American College for getting Sally Osba. Sally just retired from Xavier University and had been their predominant major gift officer, plan giving officer there for many years, did a tremendous job. She'll be stupendous in that position. Really excited to hear that. When we go back to nonprofits and why this designation is important to them, one of the things that I sometimes hear from advisors when they're talking to their clients, who ultimately are our donors, is that there are really 3 buckets that people can leave their money to at certain levels of affluence, and that is you can leave it to your family, you can leave it to your community, or you can leave it to the government. And so in the CAP program, help us understand how that education would help us as fundraisers understand how to help our donors understand that they have a choice and they really only have to use 2 of those 3 buckets.
Right. Well, I think an awful lot depends on who's going to have this conversation and the kind of conversation you're just starting. I think if we leave it in the hands of advisors, it's going to end up a conversation about foundations, possibly donor-advised funds. It's going to end up with money which the advisor is going to allocate to philanthropy, but it's going to be allocated to philanthropy in a way which is somewhat impersonal. It's not going to be connected to specific causes. If we can get you involved as a nonprofit in that conversation early, you can heat up the conversation, so it's not just about leaving money at death to a foundation. Let's say the family's going to leave a third of their money to a foundation at death by working with an advisor. It would really be helpful if they would start sooner, if they'd educate the kids in philanthropy, if they'd learn how to run a foundation or donor-advised fund, and if they would connect the money they're thinking of leaving to charity with specific causes to have specific impact. These are the points I'd be making in the courses to advisors and getting them to see why it's so important they work with a community foundation or work with a nonprofit to make sure the dollars that are going to be allocated in this global way towards philanthropy in general go to specific causes where you can actually see the results preferably during the client's or donor's own lifetime, rather than just leaving it at death. Does that answer your question, Sue? Or?
It does. And, I think for me professionally, and having been a frontline fundraiser, the excitement around the CAP program is to give our nonprofit professionals enough knowledge that they can become part of that relay team for their donors. And with that, I mean we pass the baton off to the allied professional when we get them intrigued or excited about what we're doing, but we really don't have the skills and expertise or the access to their balance sheet to understand where it fits. But if we can help work back and forth, and then again the advisor back to the nonprofits, it really is a state of nirvana when that happens. And I've seen it with a number of nonprofits, and particularly here in Des Moines, a number of our Des Moines Community Foundation staff have become CAP designated, and it really has changed the way that they work with their donors and the people in the community in a very positive way, and for a very small investment.
Right. What we're actually seeing, I think, is in terms of results that this doesn't so much get at the $10,000 gift or the $5,000 gift, which you can just go and ask for the money. But when you're talking about gifts of $1 million or more, 10 million or 20 million, when you're talking about transformational gifts, this is probably by far and away the best way to get at that. And people are writing in with lots of testimonials saying, I can't mention the names, I can't mention the cause, but significant large blocks of money when the fundraisers and the advisors team up.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
And Sue, this is the kind of work that you and John do, right? I mean, it's awfully nice of you to host this, but you're as much an expert in this as I am, and it seems like a great opportunity for your area to kind of get the pot simmering here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and we see that. I can't tell you how many times we do professional advisor training, and so that brings in CPAs, financial advisors, lawyers, etc., and many of them have no idea that these philanthropic tools exist, and it's not because they've chosen not to. It just hasn't been part of their education in the past. And when they understand how there can be that collaboration between the nonprofit and them, it really becomes very powerful.
Right. And we were talking about, we were just brainstorming before the call. Do you have any thoughts on, would you be willing to have people come together, in your facility, or basically to help catalyze people learning together here rather than doing it in solitary?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done it in the past when some of our advisors became CAP certified. So, yeah, I'd love to talk to you at a different time about that. That'd be great. Well, I don't see any questions online, and everyone here seems to be good with it.
Is anybody smiling? I can't see.
Yes, they are.
Okay, good.
So, Phil, thank you so much for your time and just all of your support in the philanthropic arena across the U.S. You've done a tremendous amount of good through the PPP group as well as the Advisors in Philanthropy and obviously the work that you're doing out at the American College. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you all for having me, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen in.
Take care. Have a good rest of the day.
Yep. Bye.